Mike. Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1650, 1650, that's a round number, of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. And yes, I remembered to get a vegetarian lasagna today. I did not forget, Mr. Wilner. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline. A podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, returning to Toronto Mic'd, it's Mike Wilner. Welcome back, Mike.
Thank you for having me back. Been a while.
It's been a while. I took a note. The last time you were on Toronto Mic'd was a backyard episode around this time, early April 2022. So it's been 3 years since you've been on Toronto Mic'd.
Was that alone or was that with my brother that
No,
one?
the brother was a Zoom
Okay.
during the heat of COVID. And then I opened up the backyards because we were still being careful, of course. And you dropped by. We did it in the backyard, April 6th, 2022. This now that you're in the basement, and we'll find out, how I got so lucky to get Wilner back in the basement. But this is your ninth.
Wow.
Your ninth appearance on Toronto Mic'd. And the first appearance, Mike Wilner, was 11 years ago. Can you believe it? So it's been over a decade, and it was episode 96. So you got in for the double digits. And do you remember your first visit?
I remember not hitting my head on the ceiling down here. Yeah, and I remember that you were interested. You wanted to talk. Back then I was hosting Jay's Talk, and you said you wanted to humanize me, which was awesome. Right. And I think it worked.
And I think I humanized you.
I think
I think I saved your career here because
how long was I gone after I talked to you?
Well, let me write. It's always fun when I look at. So I'm not going to read the description for all 8 appearances. Just the first time you dropped by, which was episode 96. And I'm 96. I'm still figuring out what the hell this is, what I'm doing. I didn't have a radio background. I didn't have Peter Gross putting me on 680 News like you did.
Like I did, yeah.
Which, as discussed at a TMLX event at Palma's Kitchen once when you and Peter were on at the same time. And I got to hear your kind words for the legendary Peter Gross.
Yeah,
but here's what I wrote.
That was a good day, too, with Perry Lefko, whose sister used to babysit me.
That's wild because Perry Lefko's brother is a highly sought guest on this program who loves Toronto Mic'd and won't come on.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Elliot Lefko,
I know. And he was in the Lowest of the Low documentary directed by Simon Head, but for some reason he doesn't want to talk about his career and times. But the description I wrote in 2014 for your first visit, Mike chats with Blue Jays broadcaster Mike Wilner about his career in radio. So I suppose we covered all that 680, 590. CIUT, where you did not. I'm trying to remember, did you cross paths with Mark Weisblot at
No, we went
CIUT?
to high school together, Mark and I.
And I remember he was, you didn't have a lot of memories, but it turns out you were only in the same school for a much shorter period of time than he thought. Because I think he was disappointed you didn't remember him as well.
I remember him. I just don't, I don't think we ran in the same circles that often, but I believe he graduated with me, but so that would have had us together for 3 years.
3 years. Okay. So we talked about your career in radio. We talked about the Cito Gaston controversy, which is, I have Cito coming on Toronto Mic'd in June because he's doing work with the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team at Christie Pitts. So should I ask Cito about this?
I mean, honestly, I don't know if he'll remember. It was 15 years ago now. And, you know, we sort of mended fences. We've run into each other a few times since, and everything is fine. Yeah, it's a long time ago. And it was a much bigger thing, I think, from, I don't know if you were paying attention to me rather than, you know, for him, it was just another day at the office.
And could you surmise this in like one sentence for those who maybe, of course, everybody can go back to episode 96, but in one sentence, could you surmise this Cito controversy?
I mean, what happened was I asked him a question that he didn't like, and he, when Cito came back in 2008, I think, to manage the Blue Jays.
I think that's right.
I was very critical of his strategy and his tactics, and you know, I didn't think he was a wonderful tactical manager. I didn't like a lot of the things he did. I didn't like the way he buried Travis Snyder, for example. And so, you know, on the post-game show, I was critical, and a lot of people did not like that because obviously, you know, Cito is an icon, right?
A saintly figure.
Yeah,
in this
for a lot
market.
of people, for sure.
Managed 2 World Series victories.
Right. And we got into, I wouldn't even say an argument, a discussion about how he used the bullpen the night before because there was a game in which he didn't have his closer, or he didn't have a left-hander available, and the closer was struggling, and he didn't have... No, he had used 2 relievers, his number 2 and number 3 relievers, to get an out each in the top of the 8th, and it wasn't necessary. He could have had the second guy, the one guy, and then had another one held in abeyance. So, and then the closer, Kevin Gregg at the time, blew the save in just spectacular fashion, right. And he didn't have anybody waiting. And we talked about that. I talked about that a lot after the game, obviously, because it cost the Jays the game.
Sure.
And then the next day, in the dugout before the game, somebody else asked him about something, and then there was a little back and forth that was uncomfortable. I asked one question too many because I wasn't going to get the answer I wanted. No one was. And he said something. I can't even remember what he said, but I wrote about it the next day because it was sort of insulting and belittling and evasive. And then I was told by the new program director at the Fan that after a day off, this was on a Wednesday, I think, so Thursday was a day off, and then Friday, Don Collins, who was the new program director,
right,
said, "Don't come into work this weekend. Just take the weekend off." And it was something that shouldn't have happened, and you know, under Nelson Millman, who was, you know, the legendary program director there, would never have happened, but that obviously, that sort of Barbra Streisanded it and made it even bigger than it needed to be.
Well, I remember at the time people saw it as like a shot across the bow. Like it was like sort of without censoring you, like sort of making you think maybe you should self-censor or, you know, have that happen.
Yeah, I you know, it was not painted as a punishment, and Collins kept saying, no, he's just taking the weekend off, but I, you know, clearly wanted to be there. It was a big series against the Yankees, and there was very obviously, he told me at the time, "You're too close to it. You need to step back a little bit." I'm not sure that I know what that meant, but yeah, it's the only time that there were ever any repercussions for anything I said on the air in the 20 years that I was at the Fan.
Did that change the way you covered the Toronto? Now, I feel you can talk more openly about this now that you're not with Rogers, and maybe the first time because you were still employed, you were maybe a little more careful, which I would totally understand. But do you think you changed the way you cover this team after that benching?
No, I don't. I mean, I did change the way I talked about Cito. I was very careful. And for a while there, didn't use his name, just referred to him as the manager, as sort of a winking, hey, I don't want to get in trouble for criticizing. So I just referred to him as the manager. which led for half a season to Jerry Howarth not saying my name on the radio, which was an interesting.
Well, I was going to ask you about Jerry. He just had a birthday. I also wanted to.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday. I think he turned 79. But I know he's been in the basement. We had our 90 minutes. And we talked about everything, and I definitely got a sense like that. He wasn't warm fuzzy for Mike Wilner, and I sort of tried to read the room, as they say. But what's your Did you guys ever make amends, you and Jerry?
I rubbed Jerry the wrong way from the beginning, not right at the beginning, but he didn't like the fact that I would be critical. He didn't like, I don't want to put words in his mouth. He didn't like the fact that I didn't treat everything with the same level of reverence that he did.
Right.
I was always sort of like, hey, we're not in church here. This is, fun. Right. And I tried my best. I was great close friends with Tom Cheek, with Alan Ashby, with Joe Cito, with everyone that I've ever worked with, Dan Schulman, and maintain that to this day, except obviously with Tom. But I hold Tom's memory very close and dear, and try to honor that whenever I can.
You sure do, man.
I'm gonna, when I head down to spring training, the first thing I'm gonna do is visit his grave before the first game I see. It's become an annual tradition of mine, and it just sort of, it's nice to see. But yeah, no, Jerry was, I feel like I didn't do things the way he wanted me to do things, and that didn't work.
You weren't his cup of tea.
For sure.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. But I mean, I sensed as much through the years, but that's just a shame, because you both seem like good people and big baseball fan, so that's a damn shame. Oh, I'm still on the description, Mike. We're out of the gates here.
Wow.
Okay, so it's very close, because you mentioned that I humanized you. The description I wrote, this is way back 11 years ago. I wrote because we're talking about you. We chatted about whether you were condescending and arrogant to Blue Jays talk callers, and then when you'd block somebody on Twitter. So there's a couple of things. One is, looking back now, Blue Jays talk in the rearview mirror several years now. Would you have changed anything? Any regrets about the way you hosted Blue Jays talk?
The only regret I have about the way I hosted Blue Jays talk, and I think it's what wound up getting me fired after the 2020 season. I think that it, again, rubbed somebody the wrong way. But I don't, I have to be true to myself. I have to be honest, and I couldn't, I've always sort of thought, I can't piss on your shoes and tell you that it's raining, right?
Right.
That's never going to be me. I wouldn't be comfortable with that. And so, I know people thought I was condescending and arrogant, but I don't think I was. I think that people just don't like to be told that they're wrong. And if I'm embedded and I'm living this thing, I'm going to know more things. I'm talking to people who are, making the decisions and who are on the field and all of that stuff, and I'm with them every day. It's impossible for a fan, almost no matter what level of fan they are, to be as in tune and, and so, yeah, when people called in and said, this guy's thinking this, or I know that, this person feels this way. No, you don't. Don't tell me that stuff about someone you've never talked to. And a lot of people, because, if you're happy and things are going well, you're not really calling a radio show. So a lot of people were belligerent, were already in a bad mood and angry, and, sometimes, sure, I match that energy. I don't think I was ever rude to anyone who wasn't rude to me first. But yeah, I think that that's sort of what that job is if you're going to do it well. Scott Ferguson had a great post-game show for a long time, and he was always very kind and always very gentle. But also, and I love Fergie, but he let a lot of stuff go. Not as much as some other people. Like, I remember once, and it was a sort of a seminal moment for me as far as what my radio career was going to be. That I was listening to a call-in show on the radio, and someone called in and just made this ludicrous statement as his thesis statement.
Right.
And it was absolutely wrong, factually. And that was going to be the basis of his call. This was what he wanted to talk about. And the host said, and just let him go.
Right.
And I thought, I'm never going to do that. So if you start a call with me with a thesis statement that is incorrect, I'm going to tell you that it's incorrect and tell you what's really going on. And a lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people did, but one person clearly who controlled my future on that broadcast didn't. And once the moment was right, I guess they decided to pull the plug.
And you did bounce back very nicely, I would say, at least from my seat here in South Etobicoke.
Yeah, I feel like I landed great.
Yeah. So in addition to writing for Canada's largest newspaper by circulation, covering the Blue Jays for the Toronto Star, you get to host Deep Left Field.
Yeah.
And how is that going?
I love it. I mean, I think, we were the number one baseball podcast in Canada for the whole month of January, which was outstanding.
Nice.
I think people are enjoying it. I feel like I do things differently, and I really love, and you would, I think you understand this as well as almost anybody. I love the long form. When I was on the radio doing the pregame show, interviews were 3.5 minutes. And if I wanted to go 4, I had to pass it by first Bruce Brenner and then Tom Young. And, they were always mindful of the schedule, but yeah, if you need it, do it, but I mean, that's 4 minutes. And now I'm talking to guys for 25.
You're preaching to the converted here.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's so
nowhere
much
to breathe
better.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you, other than, pointed specific questions, right? Like, how do you even build a rapport and get into what I call real talk, but get into some of the meatier subject matter when you only have, you're having 2 to 3 minutes of
Yeah,
this?
you can't. It's impossible.
Right.
And on a radio, like an hour-long radio program, occasionally you'd have a 12-minute interview, which is nice. But, being able to sit down with Kevin Gosman for 25 minutes and you get into cinnamon buns and where does he shop in Toronto and all that stuff. And it's so much better than, because if when you're limited to 3.5, you get maybe 2 good questions and you get a lot of the I'm going to give 110% crap.
Yeah.
I love the long form. Love it. And I love what I've been able to do with bringing people together. Like, I had a show last winter where Jordan Romano and Danny Jansen and Ryan Barucki were all together and we talked for an hour, and that was amazing.
That is like when I got Norm and Mike Wilner together, that's I know that feeling. Now, when you speak to, and we're going to get some specifics. You mentioned you're going to Florida, so I need some specifics on this. But when you speak to the American-born Blue Jays, will the fact that we're in a trade war and the president of the United States is speaking of annexing our sovereign nation, will that ever come up in your conversations with these American-born Blue Jays?
What's interesting is in the episode of Deep Left Field that comes out this afternoon, probably going to drop in 90 minutes.
Okay.
Gregor Chisholm, my Toronto Star colleague, and I did a mailbag episode, and the last question was about the trade war and what's going to be. And I think, Gregor, who was down there earlier in spring training, I haven't been there yet, answered it well, and he said, you're in the baseball bubble down there, right? So nothing is really, and that's the thing that I've always loved about spring training. It's like you're fully embedded in baseball. There's nothing but baseball happening for you. The days are 10 hours long, so you really don't have anything to do, any time to do anything after a game, except eat dinner and then pass out because you're exhausted.
Right.
And then you got to get up at 6:30 the next day at the latest to make it in time, which is very, very difficult for me. So there's nothing but baseball happening. So it's really hasn't been discussed. But on March 27th at the home opener, when the Star Spangled Banner gets booed by 40,000 people, it's going to be discussed. So up until then, I mean, maybe I'll ask that question ahead of time. What are you going to think if your anthem gets booed? And, I wonder how many of them are even aware. I guess they kind of have to be. The Four Nations Cup happened.
But I could totally see them not being aware.
Oh, a lot of them. But I think the Four Nations Cup happened during spring training, and so there was a lot of talk about that, about the American anthem being booed and the Canadian anthem being booed in Boston. But a lot of them are unaware of what's happening, the trade war, and a lot of them, the annexation threats. I was telling you before we started that I'm in this baseball geek league with one of the Arkells and a couple of other Canadian stars of stage and screen, but there are a couple of Americans in there too. And a couple of them the other day were just making a couple of jokes, 51st State jokes. And I said, we don't find that funny.
Not funny at all.
Right. So I don't think people down there are aware of exactly what's going on up here. And I think it's going to be a slap in the face to a lot of the American players on opening day when their anthem gets booed. So, and I think some will be upset. I think at some point somebody's going to say something dumb and then it's going to blow up. But for now, there's nothing. But I will ask that question down there, and it's a good idea, and maybe it'll sort of prepare them for what they're about to face.
I was going to say, I'm thinking now, Richard Griffin used to do this, but there's somebody on staff of the Blue Jays who's responsible for media relations.
There are
right?
several, yeah.
Several, okay. See, I never have to deal with these people, but that's your job. But
all wonderful, by the way. Andrea Goldstein, who I worked with at 680 in the 90s, is the head of communications there.
So I'm going to assume it would be sage for somebody to inform the players what is happening, and that when you hear boos during the Star Spangled Banner, we're not booing American-born Blue Jays. This is because their president is threatening our sovereignty.
Yeah, and hopefully someone will do it, and I think I think they will, because otherwise, a lot of them are just going to be looking around and thinking, what the hell is going on?
Well, they can't possibly be. I mean, I think it would be irresponsible to allow your personnel to be blindsided.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, maybe you'll have to do it. Hey, FYI, they're not booing you, Mr. Gosman. Okay. Can you specifically, when do you leave for Florida?
Specifically?
Yeah, I need to know. I don't need to know to the minute.
Want the flight number?
I want what's the flight number, Mr. Wilner?
I will be there for Saturday's spring breakout game. I'm really excited about that. All the best young prospects from every team are playing over the course of 3 days, today, tomorrow, and Saturday, one game each. So I wanted to make sure that I was there for the spring breakout. Okay,
kudos to the Toronto Star that two of you, at least, so Gregor, who's an FOTM as well, love that guy, but you and Gregor have both been sent to Florida to cover this team.
Rosie's down there right now.
That's three.
Yep.
To me, in 2025, that's a great story. That three different people will be compensated for going to Florida to cover this baseball team.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. It's a very much a changing media landscape, and spending has been throttled back in a lot of places, but spring training is super important, and the Toronto Star recognizes that. It's not what it used to be, obviously. From 2002 to 2020, I went down for the entirety of spring training. I was there for 5 weeks every year, with the exception of the year that my second daughter was born, when I left a week early and then waited 2 weeks because she was late. And I continue to remind her of that. But, and the Star used to have all of spring training covered. It was 2 weeks for Rich Griffin and then 2 weeks for Rosie and 2 weeks for Zorro or Laura Armstrong or Gregor once he got there. And it's only a week each now, but it still gives us enough time to talk to everybody and establish those relationships. And that really pays off over the course of the 6-month season, because it's different if they see you in spring training.
I can imagine.
It is.
So you're off to Florida for work purposes.
Yeah.
It's your job to cover the Blue Jays for the Toronto Star. How do you, Mike Wilner, personally feel about visiting the United States at this time?
I'm not comfortable with it. I'm really, like I said the other day, I wish I could pack up all week's worth of meals and bring them down so I wouldn't have to spend any money anywhere down there. This is the first time I've not looked forward to going down to spring training. I have to do it for work. If I had a choice, I wouldn't. I said a couple of weeks ago, I think, if in the wake of the trade war, the Star decided to pull the travel, I wouldn't push back, where ordinarily I would very much.
Sure.
I'm not happy about it. I'm really not. I'm going to be super careful. And just with contributing to the economy, I don't want to. And you have to, because it's important for work. It's really important, especially for what I do, to be down there. But I'm not going to be doing any of the usual fun things that I usually do when I have time down in spring training. It's going to be ballpark, hotel, eat something, and that's it.
And a lot of tongue biting, I bet, because when you see the red hats and the Trump signs, etc., in Florida, I'm sure you're gonna feel it.
I've felt that since 2016. Yeah, that's sure. And it's not. I think Pinellas County, where Dunedin is, has been Republican, and it's been Democrat, and it's been Republican. I don't know what it is now, but it's a good mix. But it's very, very rare to run into someone down there, especially for me, who wants to engage politically. Like, I don't know anybody who lives there, right? I'm not running into friends, and all the people that I see that I'm friendly with are from up here anyway. So yeah, I've never really been cornered into a political conversation. Well, Florida's been problematic ever since I've been going down there. It's just a lot worse now. But I'm not worried about seeing too many red hats.
Your comment a moment ago, so true that could you have ever imagined a scenario where you would be like what's the term? That's the double negative, where you're not looking forward to going to spring training to watch the Blue Jays play baseball? Like, the fact that you wouldn't want to do that. It's kind of wild, this world we're living in right now. I think that's unbelievable. My reaction to even if they voted for Kamala and they live in a blue state, just Americans in general, it's just not now, Satan. Like, I'm just wondering how you personally, even outside of your work travel to Florida, how are you dealing with this state of the world right now and these threats that seem to be relentless? They don't seem to be dissipating as he gets distracted by something else.
Yeah, I'm not happy about it. Obviously, I can't imagine how any of us here can be happy about it. It's a scary time. It really is. I mean, for the entirety of our lives, and now the vast majority of people's lives in the world, or in Canada and in the United States, everything's been comfortable. Everything's been fine. Mm-hmm. And the irritations, the stuff that we've gotten so worked up politically about, have been obviously very important, especially the lives of marginalized people. But we are freer and fairer and more comfortable right now than we've ever been in history. And I think the fact that everything has been so comfortable has allowed these like little petty complaints and annoyances to be able to blow up and to be able to allow very unserious people to rise to levels of huge prominence politically. And I mean, the whole convoy crap and all of that stuff. And I mean, you can hate Justin Trudeau all you want. In the grand scheme of things, everything's fine, or was. And now things are getting serious. And it's not a joke when you threaten the sovereignty of another nation. It's not a joke when you're aligned with adversaries and you make enemies of your allies. It's not a joke when Russia invaded the country next door and we're the country next door to both Russia and the United States. And it's, you know, it's time to get serious. You and I are too old to be conscripted or, you know, to go fight.
But we have kids.
But we have kids who are not, right?
I think we each have kids, 2 kids each in their 20s.
I have one who is about to move into her 20s and the other one who already is.
I just remember from the dances.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I mean, when things are comfortable, it's easy, I think, for some people to see Pierre Poilievre as an option because he's going to shake things up because, you know, and now that we're in the situation that we're in, you have to have someone who's serious. You have to have someone who's bright. You have to have someone who hasn't made their career by just, you know, being an asshole and encouraging everyone to hate whoever's in power right now. I have real problems with anyone who uses fake outrage as a tool to gin people up, because they're not serious people. And that goes for a lot of people south of the border, and it goes for that whole MAGA North movement, which amazingly has been pushed back on so hard over the last 3 months, right? The Liberals went from 20 points down to a tie.
No, if we had been having this chat 3 months ago, I would have seen it as a foregone conclusion that the Conservative Party of Canada will form the next government.
And a majority.
We'll have a big majority.
Right. And now there's no chance, I don't think. And that's a wonderful thing.
Right. My goodness, so much to discuss here, but I'm going to... Yeah, let's do some happy before we get back to some depressing here. Okay, so a little happy, which is... I understand Pi Day, everybody. If you don't know what Pi is, it's 3.14, which would be March 14th is Pi Day.
Yep.
I understand that's a very special day for you, Mike Wilner.
Yeah, I love pie.
What's your favorite flavor of pie?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I like an apple crumble. I think that's top of the list.
You need some vanilla ice cream, though, with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like with a little caramel sauce on it.
Okay, yeah. I'm sold. Holy smokes. Okay. Right. I understand you're going to have a happy birthday tomorrow, Mike Wilner.
Yeah, Pi Days is my birthday.
So happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And interestingly enough, one of the other episodes of Toronto Mike that we have done together, and I don't want to say which one because I don't want to give out too much information, was the day before one of my daughter's birthdays.
Okay. So now people have a 1 in 8 chance of finding out when your daughter's birthday is. Although what are they going to do with that? What are they going to do with that information? Like I feel like
the less info, the better. Damn it.
Okay.
But
happy birthday. And I've messed this up in the past and I had to make amends, but I got it right this time. I have a vegetarian lasagna in my freezer right now from Palma Pasta. That's for you, Mike Wilner.
Yeah,
that's a birthday gift for you.
I appreciate it. It's a wonderful birthday gift. So is this tape measure that I'm playing
that's from Ridley
here?
Funeral Home.
Very nice.
And they're at 14th and Lakeshore. And Brad Jones recorded a new episode just yesterday of Life's Undertaking. People can hear Life's Undertaking with Brad Jones. in their podcast feed of choice when they're listening to Deep Left Field and Toronto Mic'd, of course, at Life's Undertaking. So that measuring tape is yours. Make sure you don't leave. It's in my freezer. Don't leave without your lasagna. Thank you, Palma Pasta. Palma Pasta is going to feed us at TMLX 18. And I'm throwing this at you if you're available, Mike. You know I love it when you show up at the Toronto Mike listener experiences, but there is one taking place in South Etobicoke at the Great Lakes Brewery, which is 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard. I've seen you there for one in the past.
Love it. I'm looking up the schedule now.
It is, June 26th.
June 26th.
6 to 9 p.m. That is a Thursday.
Blue Jays are in Cleveland during the day. So if I'm not on the road, and I don't expect to be as long as this trade war is still going on, I will have that evening available. I'm actually stunned, looking at the Blue Jays schedule. I check it out every year because I want to see when, my life is programmed, right, for 6 months. But they play on almost no Thursday nights this year.
Wow.
Yeah, usually Mondays are the big day off, but they have a ton of Thursday afternoon games and a few Thursdays off. I think they only play twice on a Thursday night all season long. It's very strange.
Well, I'm glad they're not playing on Thursday night, June 26th, 2025, because that means people like yourself, Mike, can make an appearance. It's a free event. Again, TMLX 18. Everybody who can hear my voice right now is invited, and your first Great Lakes beer is on the house. And Palma Pasta will feed you. So come hungry, Mike, and enjoy some Palma Pasta.
Love all that stuff. Absolutely. If I'm not in Cleveland, and I expect that if this crap that we were just talking about continues, I don't expect to want to go on the road at all this year.
You might not be allowed in at that point.
Wow.
Who knows?
This is another thing is I have a passport, so they can't not let me in, right? So I don't have to be worried about that. I don't know how long I'll maintain the dual, but for now, I've still got it. It costs a lot of money to renounce your American citizenship, as it turns out.
Bob Ezrin just did it. I guess you might have heard about that, but from Pink Floyd and Alice Cooper and the great producer, Bob Ezrin's been making a lot of noise. I got to get him in the basement to talk about it further. But you said the C word, crap. So I'm going to just ask you about your plumbing emergency, because I'm on Blue Sky, as you are. By the way, love the fact that you're on Blue Sky. I know you've been there a while now, but I might have
beaten you there.
No, I'm going to go check the receipts. I think I beat you there, but your brother probably beat me there, because I saw Norm switched from X to Blue Sky, and you were kind of doing both, and I was kind of doing both. But I got to say, my go-to place if I'm going to post is Blue Sky, and you're a great follow there.
Thank you. And are you still posting on X?
Well, so it's a good question.
Don't.
Came up with Antonia Zerbasius, who you missed at the Toronto Star, gone before you got there. But it came up with her, where what I'm currently doing is I write it for Blue Sky, and I do a Control A. Although on a MacBook, is it a Control? I'm dating my Windows A. I Command A, then I Command C, and then I drop it in 5 different places. So I drop it on LinkedIn, I drop it on Instagram, I drop it on Facebook on my personal account, I drop it on Facebook for the Toronto Mike podcast account. And yes, as we speak, I do paste it into X, and I don't ever check tweets on the app formerly known as Twitter. I do still check mentions, which I think soon I'll be cutting that off. I think I'll do a Bedini and I'll be out of there. But right now I'm checking the mentions and the DMs. Some people are still messaging me there. But soon I think I will do the cut. Have you made the cut?
Yes, I did. As soon as Elon Musk did that Nazi salute, I was out.
Can I ask you about this? So I saw it.
Yep.
To me, there's no doubt in my heart what he was doing.
None.
Bruce Dobigan was here the other day telling me he was just saying hello, and he's named a bunch of people who have done it. And I looked Bruce, so this is just the other day, and I looked Bruce in the eye and I said, okay, so you think it's okay what he did? Let me record you doing exactly what Elon Musk did, and I'll share it on social media, that Bruce Dobigan, because it's fine, right, Bruce?
Sure.
He's not going to do it on. So anytime, and just this is a message for anyone, if anyone tells you that was not a Nazi salute, just have them mimic it on a recording device, because they won't.
Right.
Because they know exactly what it was.
Of course. And that was the last straw for me. I was already had one foot out the door, but I got too much skin in that game to support anyone who's doing anything like that. And whether I'm not going to say, I mean, I was going to say whether he meant it to be or not, because very obviously he did. The people who support such things understand it to be that. And again, if you're sitting at a table with 10 Nazis, but you're not a Nazi, guess what? I had a conversation with someone on Blue Sky the other day about not posting on Twitter anymore, and he said, you know, I don't quite remember what the genesis of the conversation was, but he said, look, he's got a social network there, made a lot of friends that he doesn't know in real life, and he's not seeing any of the horrible stuff, the racist stuff, the Nazi stuff, and he's not engaging with any of that. It's just his place to be with these people who won't move off, and he doesn't understand, or he's not going to get into them, not going to get into it with them about why. And I said, if your favorite bar gets bought by a Nazi, and you know their swastikas get put up, and you keep going, but you don't talk to any of the Nazis, and you don't, you know, you're just there, and this is your place, then you're going to a Nazi bar.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make one more post. I'll do the Bedini move, where I'll do one more post to say, I'm no longer posting here. Here's my Blue Sky address if you care to follow what's going on in the TMU. And that'll be it. You're 100. You know, this half-assed thing I did, which
and
somehow,
I did it for the whole baseball season last year. I did
know.
it for the entire baseball season. I posted on Blue Sky first, and then I copied it and put it on Twitter because, you know, I have 85,000 followers there almost.
Right.
But the engagement is so limited there. Again, I haven't been back since November. Someone just put I saw something on Blue Sky yesterday that someone with, I don't know, 15 times the followers on Twitter still gets more engagements on Blue Sky.
Human beings are on Blue Sky,
right,
instead of these trolling bots who, it's a horrific experience for me every time I do go in. Why do I want to feel that? And just like I would not buy a Tesla, why am I pasting my content into X and then sharing it with my followers next? I'll do one more post later today to say I'm out, and that's it, because I realize your analogy there about going to the bar. Yeah, I'm going to the bar. Like, I'm going to the bar.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for me. That's it for me.
Thank you. And I hope a lot of people follow your lead, because even if, you know, you think, and you're not, but even if you think you're a small fish there and you don't have much of a following, and, you know, you're still contributing to making him money. And this is, you know, even if you push back at the Nazi thing and you don't think he's a Nazi, which he very clearly is, he's destroying the United States right now. And he's the co-president of a country that wants to take our country over.
Right.
So, yeah, no Canadian should be...
That's it for me. If you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter, that's it for me. But I will say, I do post these promotional, you know, tweets when I have a guest like Mike Wilner in the basement. It's going to LinkedIn, it's going to Facebook, it's going to Instagram, and it's going to Blue Sky, of course, which is my favorite. And it will continue to do that. But that's it for me and X, so long as Elon Musk owns that app.
Thank you.
And I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring this up, but just yesterday I was visited by this filmmaker who made a great documentary about Ontario Place. And it's going to air on TVO like later this month, a couple of weeks from now, I think. But her name is Ali Weinstein, and her father, Larry, is also a filmmaker, Larry Weinstein. And during this conversation, I wanted to offer my condolences to Ali, because Ali's aunt, Judy, was murdered by Hamas on October 7th, 2023.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wanted her to tell me more about Judy. And it was a beautiful moment to hear about Judy, who sounds like a lovely woman. But then I mentioned to her my conversations lately with Dana Levinson, who I produce a podcast for. And Dana tells me she and her family, her children, they don't feel safe in their own Toronto neighborhood. And I'm just going to ask you right now, as a proud Jewish man, if do you feel safe in this city?
I do, but I don't live among the Jews. This is the thing. Like I talk, I talk about once my kids are grown up and gone, moving back to live among the Jews. There are obviously a few Jewish communities in Toronto. I don't live at Bathurst and Shepherd. I don't live in Bathurst Manor anymore. And if I did, I absolutely wouldn't feel safe because there are weekly huge rallies that are anti-Israel and that are anti-Jewish, whether you want to, paint it as, no, Zionism is different or whatever. No. And the leadership in the city is doing nothing to make the Jewish residents of Toronto feel safe and protected. I'm a big proponent of cultural mosaic and immigration. I married an immigrant. But I think leave your hate at home is a huge thing. Leave your hate at home. And, I live in only about 10 minutes away from here in Mississauga. The only Jew, I'm sure, in my neighborhood, and maybe like one of 8 in the whole city. But there was a rally. There were a few in Mississauga last year and the year before, where there were people who were calling for intifada. And intifada, as much as you want to put a pretty face on it, means killing Jews everywhere, all over the world. That's what the intifada is. And, again, as much as you want to change things and say this isn't what they mean, from the river to the sea means no Israel and no Jews. I'm not going to compare different ethnic cleansings, but if you take a look at the Arab world and how many Jews lived in those countries in the 40s and 50s and how many Jews live there now, they've almost been completely ethnically cleansed of Jews. And so I harbor no illusions. When I hear intifada and when I hear some of these other chants, it's scary. It's scarier that it's being allowed to happen, and that there are no repercussions, and that Jews don't feel protected. It's scarier to see, videos of Jewish people being advised to stay away from places, not free to go wherever you want in your own city, in your own country. Every time I drive past the school that I went to, the primary school that I went to, that my kids went to, there's a police, huge, van command center sitting there 24/7. We had, almost no outrage about the fact that a Jewish girls' school has been shot at twice around Shepherd and Chesswood or wherever it is. It's a very, very scary time. There's no question. It doesn't affect me on a daily basis because I go from home to the ballpark and back, but it's also sort of been, something that I grew up with, Holocaust education for kids who go to Jewish day schools like I did starts in grade 1. Well, we don't even mention it till grade 10, if that, in the public system. And there are a lot of kids who just don't know and aren't aware. and again, when you're living in unserious times where we have been for a long time, that stuff hasn't mattered, and it's starting to matter a lot more now. But yeah, there's, when I talk to friends of mine who live in Bathurst Manor, who live up around in Thornhill, where they're protesting outside synagogues, and it's very scary. Jews have always been an extremely convenient target, and there are so few of us, and there are a lot of people. It's so strange to me to think of, but there are a lot of people who've never met a Jewish person and who have no idea. Like there's an old story about one of the Blue Jays a long time ago when he met Kevin Pillar for the first time, putting his hand on his forehead and shaking it around and like, where are the horns? That actually happened. So, yeah, it's scary. It's very scary, and I understand this. One of the scariest parts of it is just the incredible failure of leadership in the city to make people feel safe.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear this. Very sorry to hear this. I went to Catholic schools, and as a result, you can imagine everyone I knew, all my buddies I went to school with, everyone's Catholic.
Sure.
Like it was, I was an adult. It's gonna sound, when did I meet my first Jewish person? But forget.
And there are 200,000 Jews in Toronto. It's like one of the biggest Jewish communities in the world.
I know, but when you think of your circle,
right.
It's all school. It's pretty much all school chums, pretty much. And absolutely, this part of the reason all 4 of my kids have gone to public schools is because I want them to be aware that there's a wide variety of people in this wonderful city of ours, and I don't want them to be segregated with your only. But you went to a Jewish school, right? Mm-hmm. So it's similar, except the taxpayers aren't funding your school.
That's right. They're funding yours.
But I don't think that's right myself. But
I agree with you.
But I should point out I'm happily lapsed, and I'm a very happy atheist now. But
I do want to. One thing just popped into my head.
Go ahead.
I remember having a conversation with my ex's one of her friends, and we were talking. I don't remember what it was, whether it was about a Jewish holiday or about something else, and this woman who went to Catholic school and all the way through, and she said, "Okay, but what do normal people do?" And I was like, "What?" So and I think a lot of people think that, right? It's just we're normal and they're different. Yeah.
I'm at war with the word normal in general. Anyways, the word normal kills me now. I'm trying to. When people use it now, I just say, "You mean typical?" It's a different word, and it's a different.
I don't know what normal is, if anything is.
Because I'm not normal, but that there's a negative connotation there to begin with. Okay, so we're covering a lot of ground. I did.
Yeah, no kidding.
I know.
I wasn't expecting us to go.
I'll be very honest with you. Very honest with you, which is you're speaking to a guy who has loved the Blue Jays since 1983 when he discovered the Blue Jays on 1430, and the music of your life, by the way. And
that's right.
I would listen to Tom and Jerry call Blue Jay game. Then I discovered this team, and I'm like, I loved it. I loved that team. Eventually, in '85, when George Bell on his knees and Tony Fernandez is coming out to give him a high five, Doyle Alexander pitched that gem.
Yeah, he did. 5-1.
Jeez, that was like winning the World Series to me. You should see my scrapbook. I still have it. Quotes from Happy Blue Jays. I was a Toronto Star reader, and I would cut out all these different articles. Loved the team since '83. So in my life, this is the first time I feel like sitting a season out. Like I feel like sitting. I don't have, and I know where it's coming from. It's been years of built up feeling like Mark Shapiro and his general manager, Ross Atkins, this is just Mike speaking for Mike, Toronto Mike, not Mike Wilner here speaking, that this, and there's a lot of baggage and how they arrived here in Rogers and the keys they got to the car here, but I don't feel they're good. I don't feel they're competent. I don't trust this team in their hands, and I don't understand why they're still in these positions of power. I don't understand why we haven't relieved them of their duties here of the Toronto Blue Jays. And I feel like inside my heart, there's almost like a protest of sorts, which is that, sports is all fun and games. It's an entertainment thing. And I'm not entertained by following this team right now. I'm not entertained by watching this team. If someone gifts me tickets to the Dome, I'm happily going to take the almost 9-year-old. She's 9 on Saturday, by the way. So my youngest.
Birthday.
Yeah. I'll take the 9-year-old, or I'll take the almost 11-year-old. Oh, heck, I'll take my oldest kid. I'll take kids to the Dome for live baseball, but I'm not into the Jays. So I was very excited to talk to Mike Wilner, and I do have some Jays content I want to ask you about. But I realized all the stuff I want to ask you about is related to incompetence of Ross Atkins as general manager. Like, they're not like baseball questions. Like, so that's why we've gone almost an hour. You were late, Mr. Wilner, so not quite an hour.
True.
But without, Jays talk. And I think some people find that unusual. Mike Wilner visited and you spent an hour and you didn't get to the Blue Jays. But it's because I'm not feeling it. Like, I don't know what you're gathering from, deep left field listeners and people who read your column in the Toronto Star, but do you feel a dip in Blue Jays fever for 2025?
Oh, absolutely. Again, that's another thing that Gregor and I addressed on the today's new episode of Deep Left Field. It's coming out in about an hour.
If we talk long enough, it'll be out before people can hear this episode.
I'm gonna have to push back my lunch.
Well, you do have a heart out. Do you have a heart out?
I can
like,
push the
if
guy
you tell
back.
me what minute you got to leave, I'm pretty good at this point.
I'm supposed to be having lunch at 12:30 with someone who I've been trying to get together with for a while, but I'll ask him if we can push it back because I'm enjoying this.
Because I can do whatever, But if you had a heart out, I'm now even more disappointed you were late. Was it Sleepy
Wilner?
Wilner?
Live so close. It was actually caught up in the. I lost track of time worrying about who I'm going to take in this Geek League draft.
Is Stu Stone in this draft?
Yes,
he's in the basement next week.
Yeah. Oh, awesome! So you'll ask him about it.
I will, for sure. He's buddies with Atkins, so it's very difficult to have conversations with Stu about Atkins because he really defends everything Atkins does. Yeah, and it's a bit frustrating because there's a personal bias at play, we know what that's like. There's many in FOTM I've become close to, and then I find myself defending them, and I have to step back and say, "Oh, that's because you like this guy as a person and you're friends now." And that's what's happened to Stu and Ross Atkins.
It's often very frustrating to talk to Stu about
Atkins?
About Ross. Yeah, because he definitely sees it differently.
Well, I went to his movie premiere, the most recent Stu Stone movie. I went to see it at the premiere, and sitting directly in front of me was Ross Atkins. So that's how close they are. He was at Stu's movie premiere.
I mean, they're good friends. And it does make it difficult because he definitely tries to make excuses for Ross as often as he can. And again, he was on a show, a panel show that I did in December of Deep Left Field with Sandy Jobin Bevins and Pat Smith, who are a couple of terrific Second City guys here in Toronto and have gone on to great and wonderful things. But it was basically the three of us and then Stu, just sort of defending everything.
So long as he declares the bias.
We didn't declare the bias.
You got to do that. Okay, you lost your journalistic integrity with that one.
I wanted to protect him a little bit, but he kind of outed himself.
Well, he's out on this show anyways, which is public and he knows it. He's outed himself. I think Ross Atkins is a neighbor of his brother-in-law, Adam Rodness.
Who is a cousin of mine. Yeah, Adam Rodness.
And is the partner of the Stu Stone 5-7 films. I think it's 5-7 films. They're partners in that. So
yeah, because Stu wants people to think he's 5'7".
How tall do you think Stu is? Because I'm gonna take the Ridley Funeral Home measuring tape. We can get a definitive answer here. He says he's 5'7". He does hit his head. He does hit his head in this basement studio.
And how high is the?
I don't know. I don't know. I gotta find out. I should find out who's gonna hit their head. Who won't?
Stu is lovely, and he's a wonderful part of this Geek League. That they're all waiting for me to make a pick right now, and getting.
Well, tell them to keep waiting. Tell them you're on Toronto Mike right now.
So yeah, as far as being checked out,
right.
Gregor and I, there was a question about why should I bother paying attention to the Blue Jays this year.
Yeah.
And I think the year to check out on them was last year, coming off that horribly boring but playoff season, and then the debacle in Minnesota, and then doubling down on all the mistakes and finishing last place.
But I kind of took last year off too. Like I did.
Yeah,
I really did take most of last
I don't
year.
feel bad for you for taking last year off.
I tapped out before the trade deadline. I remember that. I never looked back.
This year I think is going to be better. I think they're going to challenge for the playoffs. I think they're probably going to make the playoffs. And who knows, Bo and Vlad might go out with a bang.
Okay, but Mike, they had 74 wins last season.
Yeah, but they did pull the chute for the final 2 months. So that's a little different, right? And they've got Bo Bichette back, who they did not have at all last year. He was terrible when he was healthy. Mm-hmm. They've added a big power bat in Anthony Santander. They fixed the bullpen, it looks like. I do, and it's not that hard to make the playoffs anymore. Right. I think that they'll be fine.
How many wins do you think would you guess you'll need to make, if you had to guess?
Oh, need to make the playoffs?
To make the playoffs, yeah.
I don't know. 84?
84. Okay. And you're right. It is starting to feel a bit like the NHL, where there's 16 teams out of 30. So half of the teams make the playoffs in the NHL.
Yeah, and 12 out of 30 make it in baseball.
Yeah, so we're almost there. We're almost there. Holy smokes! So let me ask you. Let me do this then, because people do need a bit. I was going to ask you about the reason.
But they did make the playoffs in 23, and it still wasn't fun.
No,
right?
No, it was not fun.
Yeah,
and is that when they
pulled
Barrios was dealing, and they I used to at that time I was still co-hosting Hebsy on Sports with Hebshire, so every Friday morning I would get Hebsy's take on stuff, which was always thoroughly entertaining. But that show has been retired along with Hebsy. But let me ask you some specific questions then about the Blue Jays, the stuff I'm interested in. But just about a half an hour ago, I think I set you up by saying I enjoy following you on Blue Sky, because I was going to segue over to tell you that on Blue Sky, I learned about your plumbing emergency. So do you want to just give a PSA, maybe a one or two sentence PSA?
I was wondering if they were one of your sponsors. I don't know if I want to bury them. I guess I did.
It's up to you. They're not a sponsor. I don't have any plumbing sponsors. My plumber's name is Murray. He's a good guy. I mean, there was an overflowing toilet in the basement that we couldn't fix with normal means. So, and this was in the middle of this Geek League auction. So I'm running an auction. I got 14 people that we can only get together at this one time. They're, whether they're in New York or California or here. All these superstars of baseball and stage and screen who carved out this one evening, and we have a plumbing emergency. So I had some help, and we looked up. This was 8:00 at night. All these 24/7, emergency plumbers. They'll come day or night, whatever. Right. Called a dozen of them, and none of them were available. One of them said, okay, we'll send someone, we'll just call dispatch and we'll get back to you. So we stopped calling. This was at like 10:30. Never showed up. So I don't know what people who advertise themselves as 24/7 emergency plumbers really are thinking, if they're only like 8 to 8 emergency plumbers. Right.
But then someone came over yesterday morning. And so I'm doing this auction till 1:30. We finish at 1:30 in the morning. I know they're going to phone early, so I have to go to sleep, but keep my phone sounds on so that it wakes me up. So there are a few dings at like 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. and all that stuff. So I don't sleep well. Didn't have a good day yesterday. Yesterday was not a good day. They call at 7:30 and they say he's going to be there at 9. Fine. And then I get a text at 7:50 that says he's on his way. So I'm not going back to sleep. Shows up at 9.
That's really early for Mike Wilner.
It's really early, especially after, a high adrenaline late night the night before.
Right.
And for me, that's not going out and getting hammered. It's doing auctioning off.
Who's the most famous person in the draft?
In this league?
This league, sorry.
I guess the person with the biggest CV is Nate Cordry, Rob Cordry's brother. And he's been on The Daily Show. He was on Mom. He was on.
Okay. Is he Canadian?
No.
Okay.
No, we met each other 25 years ago in another baseball geek league.
Okay. All right. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay. So, wait, sorry.
So the plumber comes at 9
story. We need
he takes
conclusion.
the toilet off and snakes it and says, no, it's still busted. And then tells me that the tree roots have grown through the pipes and the things have shifted and they're going to have to put a whole thing in and do this. He used the words game over. He said it's game over for your pipes. And it's going to be $16,000.
$16,000.
$16,000. 16.
A roof would cost you less.
And he said we could start today. It's going to take a couple of days, maybe, but we might be able to get it done today. So I call my guy who generally does all the stuff for me at the house, who happens to be building a house in Windsor this week, so which is why he couldn't make it during that night. And he said, quite rightly, because you're not thinking clear when someone's telling you, hey, we're gonna make you spend $16,000 right now, and you need to do it now because your pipes are done and you got no water and all of that stuff. And don't use any of your upstairs water because it's flowing into the bathtub downstairs. He said, and reminded me that, everything's been frozen until like the last 2 days. Things are just starting to thaw. Roots aren't growing right now into your pipes. And they certainly, if everything was working yesterday and not working today, it's not because roots have grown into your pipes.
Right.
And so, and he looked at the plumbing back in August and everything was fine. So I presented this information to this plumber and he said, well, we can blow out the pipe with some power flush or something, and that'll only cost you $1,750. And I was like, well, I thought it was game over. Like I thought we were done here.
Right.
And yeah.
Game's not over, apparently.
Game was not over at all. And so then we went downstairs again, and my ex, who does kitchens and bathrooms, and she's a wonderful designer. You should all use her for your designing at beautifullyDoneInteriors.com. She comes over with her snake, and she says to the plumber, what did you do? And he said, I snaked it out 30 feet, found the clog. And she said, well, 30 feet doesn't even get you to the road. And he said, well, I did 40 feet. And he said, and so she snaked it again, and it was clear and fine. And at one point he said he did 80 feet. And then we flushed the toilet and it worked a little. And he said, yeah, see, it's still clogged up. Well, it works a little. And flushed it again and it was a little better. And then again and it was fine. So that was the plumbing thing where I just saved.
And you're not outing this company. You've chosen not to out this company. Even though you outed them on.
Yeah, I did on Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
But
so what's the difference?
But yeah, so I mean, it cost me $800 for the guy to come and snake and tell me that I needed to spend 16.
Wow.
But I feel like I saved 15 grand yesterday.
Okay, well that's a good happy ending sort of there. Good.
But just be careful if you're dealing with a plumber who you don't know and haven't built up trust with. Like I'm never one who says, "Oh, everybody's trying to scam you." But this guy legitimately tried to steal $16,000 from me yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you got a second opinion there. Okay,
I got a call from them afterwards when I hadn't given him my email address to send the invoice, so I got a call from their receptionist, and I told her what happened, and then I got a call from like the boss trying to defend the guy, and he said, we're not that kind of company. And I said, yeah, today you were.
Yeah, your experience suggests otherwise.
Yeah.
All right, so Mike, what I'm going to do now is ask you some specific Blue Jays related questions.
The lunch has been pushed to 1 o'clock for
Okay,
you.
good, because I have some very important questions, and I'll try to get you out of here in like 20, 25 minutes or whatever.
The place is only about 10 minutes away, so.
Okay, well,
Get me out
your
of here by a
lasagna's
quarter to
frozen,
1 and
so
I'm
it's not
fine.
that. Okay. But first, do you know about recyclemyelectronics.ca? You ever heard of this? So if you have old cables, old electronics, old devices, maybe they're in a drawer, they're in a closet.
I have a lot of those.
Yeah, you probably are like holding on to these things since the 90s, and you're like, I need to get rid of these. Well, don't throw them in the garbage because those chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca. You put in your postal code. They'll be like, oh, for you, for example, possibly they'll be like, hey, there's a Staples near Sherway Gardens. You can drop this off to be properly recycled. So recyclemyelectronics.ca. And I would just let the listenership here know about a new podcast called Building Toronto's Skyline from the latest sponsor of Toronto Mike. His name is Nick Iones. And Nick Iones, he's in condo development, and he's very interested in the skyscrapers that are going up. And we had a great conversation on Building Toronto Skyline with the people who are building the One Young. So speaking of, I got a Toronto Star guy in the basement. Did you ever work at One Young?
Never been inside One Young. No, and I regret that because, I mean, that's such a historical and an iconic place, right? But no, never made it into One Young.
Well, going up at that footprint at One Young is a skyscraper that will be the tallest skyscraper in the country. It's going to be 345 meters. The penthouse, which will be the 105th floor, will be the same height as the observation deck of the CN Tower. Would you ever want... Now, you can't... I don't think you can... I don't know what they're paying you at the Star. I don't think you can afford this penthouse. It's $30 million. But would you ever want to live on the 105th floor?
No.
Not. That's not your cup
as
of
you
tea.
know, from me being 7 minutes late, I'm someone who times things very tight often. I do not want to have to wait for an elevator, even though it probably will go those 105 floors in like 40 seconds or something.
Well, I think I had the guy. I was on this conversation, which is the most recent episode of Building Toronto Skyline. But there's two elevators. One that goes like from the first floor to like the 55th floor or something, and then the other one goes from the 56th to the 105th. Mm-hmm. So they have two different elevators. But I would still
hate that. Just as someone who is generally anxious and who has had some claustrophobia issues in the past, to be in an elevator where for the first 56 floors there's no way out, that'd be real bad.
Real bad. Okay, so you're not buying one of those $30 million penthouses there. Okay.
That's why. That's right. That's the reason I'm not buying a $30 million penthouse.
Miles Straw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who I'm sure is lovely. I'm sure he's lovely. Rosie DiMano wrote a column about him today. But yeah, I hate that it's about Miles Straw. It's not about Miles Straw, but yeah.
No, but that's like saying when we boo the Star Spangled Banner, we're not booing Gosman or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So your headline, and you don't write your own headline. Do you write? No, you don't write the headline. Okay, you write the... But
the headline writers we have at the Star have come up with some phenomenal stuff. Like I could never do what they do.
So I'm going to read this headline. Why the staggering Roki Sasaki screw-up by the Blue Jays front office is a fireable offense. Would you surmise for us, and I find, like, I understand this enough of the what's happening here with the international money or whatever it's called. Like, can you explain to the people out there who aren't sure what's going on, but there's $11 million committed to Straw and what that has to do with Sasaki and why it's a fireable offense?
I love how much intertwinage there is between this show and the episode of Deep Left Field that is about to drop this afternoon.
Maybe I should just get that MP3 and just drop it in my feed.
Hey,
and
why not?
Replace this one.
I want the listeners. We've done cooperative crossovers before, and we will continue, I'm sure. But this, the first question that I dealt with was had to do with this. So it's right off the top of the show. We talk about this.
Okay.
So do you want?
Well,
sorry, you want to know why?
Okay, so you need to maybe quickly explain international bonus pool space and what that has to do with signing Sasaki and how Miles Straw, the trade for Miles Straw, fits into this, and why is it a screw up, and how serious a screw up is it in your opinion, Mr. Wilner?
I mean, serious enough that I said it was a fireable offense. So, yeah.
Spoiler alert, though, they weren't fired.
No, spoiler alert. There's a good chance that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. walks at the end of the season and Mark Shapiro gets an extension. But so here's what happens. Everybody knows about free agency, where you go out and you just spend money and offer the best contract. And
Soto,
whoever,
for example, was a free agent.
George Springer was a free agent. Right. The Blue Jays outspent everybody. But Roki Sasaki was an international free agent, and that's different. Every team is allotted a specific amount of international bonus pool money, and they may use only that to try to sign free agents. It's somewhere between $4 and $6 million. But teams can acquire more international bonus pool money from other teams and use that to sweeten their offer. Because Sasaki is young, because under 25, I think, he didn't go through the posting system. I mean, he's 23, but I think it's because he's under 25. They didn't go through the posting system like a Yu Darvish did or an Ohtani did when they came over. So they, again, were like free agents. Sasaki isn't. The team could spend no more than its international bonus pool on him. What the Blue Jays did, in order to get more international bonus pool money, is they made a trade with Cleveland and picked up Miles Straw, because Cleveland has done a wonderful job in the past of signing young players to multi-year contracts, something that the Blue Jays have not done, and it's been, again, a miserable failure on their end for that. I wrote a column last week about how Alex Anthopoulos did it with Atlanta and signed 7 young players to great contracts, and that the Jays should have done the same thing 5 years ago. But Cleveland did it, and Miles Straw was one of the guys they signed, and I think they gave him like a 5-year, $25 million contract after his 2021 or 2 season, when he won a Gold Glove, stole a bunch of bases, hit 270, got on base, no power, but they gave him the multi-year deal, and then he fell off a cliff. He had a terrible year in 2023. In 2024, he didn't even make the team, and they put him through waivers, and no one picked up the contract because it's a huge contract. And he spent the whole year in AAA except for 7 games in September, where he was just basically used as a defensive replacement and a pinch runner.
Right.
So it's thrown out money on Miles Straw, and Cleveland was desperate to unload the rest of this contract. And the Blue Jays were their huckleberry, right?
Right.
And they traded the Jays international bonus pool. They said, we'll give you this $2 million in international bonus pool money if you take Miles Straw off our hands. And the $11.75 million, I think Cleveland kicked in 3 of the 15 that was left. So there was $11.75 million for this player that Cleveland had no use for, that had been waived through the entire major leagues and nobody claimed. And Cleveland was just desperate to get out from under this money. And the Blue Jays said, okay. But they said okay before they had an agreement with Roki Sasaki. And then Sasaki that evening signed with the Dodgers.
Right.
And then the Dodgers made a couple of trades for international bonus pool money.
So this is a very important detail, which is you can have the agreement with Sasaki before you make the trades that gives you the international bonus pool space.
Yes, the extra space.
So, I mean, it's going to shock you, Mike. I've never worked in the front office of not even the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team that plays at Christie Pitts. I'll shout out to Rob Butler, who manages that team, by the way.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. Okay.
He's wonderful.
Now, so Ross Atkins, Stu Stone's buddy there,
and Mark Shapiro. Like, this is not.
Well, yeah. So when
every major decision that's made in the baseball department goes through Mark Shapiro. Period.
Right. He's got to. Yeah. So Atkins can't make these decisions on his own. He brings them to Shapiro to get like stamped or whatever,
or may even go the other way around.
Okay.
You know, this may be. I don't know quite how much Mark Shapiro is running the show, but I do believe he's running the show a lot.
So. The word incompetent comes to mind when somebody in that position with this team more than $11 million is now committed to Straw.
Yep.
And we didn't acquire Sasaki.
Correct.
That's like, forget Merkel's boner, okay? That's Atkins' boner.
Shapiro and Atkins boner. I hate to paint it all on Ross Atkins because, again, like everyone blames all the managerial moves on John Schneider. He doesn't have autonomy. Ross Atkins doesn't have autonomy.
Although he doesn't have autonomy, but I do remember him being thrown under the bus when Berrios was pulled after.
Very much so. Yeah.
So why?
Another embarrassment for this team that talks so much about collaboration and culture and all that stuff, and everyone is involved in every decision except this one was all John Schneider. That's embarrassing.
How does Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, how do they survive all of it? I know the answer is Mr. Rogers.
Yep, that's the answer. Yeah. Mr. Rogers. I mean, and I wrote it last week, I think, when the week before, when I was talking about how Alex Anthopoulos signed up all these young kids in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. But Alex Anthopoulos isn't here because he doesn't speak Ed Rogers' language. Mark Shapiro does.
Corporate gobbledygook.
Yeah. For sure. That's to the public, but also right. I think in private they speak the same language. They speak that boardroom language. And
where Anthopoulos was a baseball guy.
Yes, still is.
Yeah. Well, I told you earlier, part of the reason I'm never been comfortable with the state of affairs because I'm wearing the shirt. I was like, I'm taking a year off, but I still enjoy thinking about that 2015 hype train.
It was amazing.
It was amazing. We definitely had an episode where we talked about it. Like I couldn't that time. I couldn't consume enough Blue Jays talk. Like I was like every day I had to consume as much Blue Jays stuff as I could because I was. Fan means fanatic. Did you know that? Okay.
Yeah, I've heard.
The 2015 and 2016 team also exciting, but the 2015 team particularly, and that's when you get the bat flip. And for those who can't see me right now, I'm wearing a shirt that commemorates FOTM Joey Bats and his bat flip. And that was Alex Anthopoulos' team. And you're all choked up over it as well. Right. And we got word before the playoffs started that the Cleveland regime was coming. And I'm just going to shout out an FOTM. His name is Joel Goldberg. And Joel Goldberg created Electric Circus, but he does a lot of work with Moses still at the Zoomerplex there. And he's from Cleveland, diehard Guardians fan. And we were recording for a client, so it wasn't a Toronto Mic'd episode, but I did record, and he was telling me about how Shatkins performed in Cleveland and what the fans thought of Shatkins. And then Shatkins is recruited, if you will, recruited to Toronto, and Alex Anthopoulos is out the door. And just all of this, here we are in 2025. How many years have we had now? 10?
This is the 10th season of Shapiro and Atkins, yes.
And am I right that 0 playoff victories? Well, if we exclude 2016
team
right.
that they largely inherited, yes.
Right, outside of, of course.
3 playoff appearances, 0-6 in those playoff games.
And I remember there's a 6-1 game in there. You have the Berrios game. There's some miraculous, like some collapses in there.
Yeah, but that's not Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins. I mean, the Berrios one
unless Schneider was instructed to remove Berrios in that game.
Which he very obviously was, but also it can't be forgotten that the Blue Jays did not score a run in that game. So it might not have mattered. Everything would have been different, though. Obviously, if you leave Berrios in,
it creates a new
space-time continuum. Yes, right, that's right. But you could also see on the field, in that 4th inning when Schneider came out to bring in Kikuchi, you could see the players' body language, and everyone was like, "What the hell is going on right now?" But again, they didn't score any runs in that game, and there was it was 8-1 game, and that was the greatest collapse or I prefer to think of it as the greatest comeback in playoff history by the Seattle Mariners. But that was awful too.
In the farm system, where they were critical of Anthopoulos because he did have the Tulowitzki and Price and that whole end of 2015. That costs you some prospects, right?
But nobody who really made an impact. Well, 2 or 3 people who made an impact out of the 20 that he traded, and it took Jeff Hoffman 8 years, and it took Jesus Tinoco 10. Tinoco had a great year last year. but that was his first, and he was one of the players.
Every Blue Jay fan would have made that trade, right? So all of us, right? Because we thrive on we didn't even make the World Series. We still talk about 2015 and 2016, right? So, okay, I read enough to know that we do not have a strong farm system right now. It's like a bottom third farm system. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I've always sort of pushed back against those ratings because a lot of players who can have an impact in the major leagues aren't the super toolsy thing that all the prospect evaluators love. Like Spencer Howarth was probably the Blue Jays' 19th best prospect last year. But when it's a consensus of everybody that it's a weak farm system of all the evaluators, and when it's been that way for years and years, then there's a little there for sure.
So let me ask you about Vladdy before we get you off to your lunch here. So what I read, I think it was Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic who reported this, but that the Blue Jays offer is like $450 million and Guerrero seeking $500 million. This is what he's reporting. That's $50 million difference over how many years is that? Maybe we pass a hat around the dome or something? Like that doesn't seem like a significant gap.
In today's Toronto Star, there's a column written by me about this and about these reports.
What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts on this are: look, if the Jays offered the report is that the Blue Jays offered $500 million that included deferrals, and Vladdy wanted $500 in present day value, and I think it's difficult to imagine that these reports aren't coming out as some damage control on the part of the Jays for not signing Vladdy, and I don't think that's going to sit well with Guerrero. But yeah, like you said, if they offered $450 and he wanted $500, the Vlad had mentioned on an interview on ESPN Deportes last week that he was looking for a 14-year deal. So the difference over 14 years is half of what Miles Straw is making this year. And I hate to keep bringing up Miles Straw, but if
that's funny though,
you're setting that money on fire to bring in Miles Straw, and you're not willing to push those chips in.
So what's going on, man? Like, why? What?
Shapiro has his valuations, and he doesn't like to move off them. I don't think he's as big a fan of Vladdy as everybody else seems to be. I mean,
do you want my speculation there?
Ooh,
well.
Yeah.
He didn't bring Vladdy into this franchise.
I think he got here. Vlad had been here for 6 weeks when he got here.
But he didn't bring Vladdy into this. That's Anthopoulos who brought Vladdy into this franchise.
I would hope that someone who's been in the game for 25 years and has reached a level that he has wouldn't be that petty. And I think that's a little convenient. I don't. I just think he doesn't value the first baseman. You look at the people that Mark Shapiro values. It's great defenders, multi-position players. Ross Atkins at the beginning of spring talked about giving Dalton Varsho a long-term contract. They love Dalton Varsho. I asked Shapiro at the end of the season if he thought Vladdy was a generational player, and he wouldn't say yes, right?
Right.
So I just don't think they think Vladdy is worth this. And I think moving to $450 was uncomfortable for them. And that was like they're thinking, well, this is as far as we go. And I don't know that they saw the value in pushing it over the finish line when there's so much value there. And I do think
they just spent all that money on the beer gardens. I don't know what the terminology, but the dome has been renovated and it's baseball first now, and it's got all the beer spots. But you need butts in the seats and people standing at those spots to purchase the overpriced beer.
And I mean, look, like I wrote in the Star today, basically, if you sign Vladdy, you're buying a statue. If they would ever put a statue of anybody besides Ted Rogers up at the Dome, Vladdy is a statue guy. He's whatever you think of him, he's on a Hall of Fame track. There is no question about it. And whether you think the contract's going to age well or not, it doesn't matter. You're buying goodwill. You're buying an identity. You're buying so much, even if you only get 7 great years out of him. Remember, he's 25 years old for another 3 days, right?
I know.
It's so short-sighted, and it's so just, it's, first basemen don't grow on trees anymore. And even if they did, they just threw almost $700 million at Juan Soto, who is going to be a first baseman in 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Vladdy was asking for 2/3. And yeah, it would have been the second biggest contract of all time. And it's more than Ohtani, but Soto changed the market. And this is someone you don't have to convince to play in Canada.
Right.
Who is, going to be a Mount Rushmore player. It's so terribly short-sighted.
And it sounds like you're not following my wild speculation that if Vladdy had been brought to the Blue, I know he was 16 or something.
He was 16.
So when he was brought into the franchise as a 16-year-old, if that was during Shapiro's watch, you think everything would play out exactly the same as it's playing out right now?
Yeah, I can't. Again, I can't imagine they're that petty.
Okay, we can disagree on some things, Mr. Wilner, because
they haven't signed Bo Bichette yet. They brought him in.
True, but Bo Bichette had a rather off season last season.
Sure, but they could have given him an 8-year deal after 2021.
Okay, wow. I'm glad I'm taking the year off. I might take a few years off here. I feel like just like I need to leave. I am going to leave X so long as Elon Musk is the owner. I got to tap out of this Blue Jay fandom. Just pause it. I'm still gonna enjoy listening to the Glory Days clips here, but
just keep listening to Deep Left Field and keep reading the Toronto Star. Please.
Don't let up on any incompetence you witness, because this is not a one-off mistake or a rare misstep or whatever. We're all human here, but this is a trend.
Yeah, it is.
This is a trend, and the team, the 74 win. Yeah, sure, they trade deadline, they got rid of a lot of parts. So but 74 wins last season, and those. I'm all riled up here. Sasaki, and what's going on with Vladdy, and what's going to happen with Bo Bichette.
And you haven't mentioned the whole Andres Gimenez thing. And while Andres Gimenez is an elite defender and wonderful, you would have thought they learned their lesson last year and the year before about going all defense and how horrible that's been.
And Atkins talks up that he's so enthusiastic about that trade.
Yeah, you tripled down on a mistake. It's not. They may have salvaged it by signing Anthony Santander, but we'll see. We'll see if Andres Gimenez hits in 2025 like he did in 2023 and 4. That's another fireable offense, because they still owe the guy like $100 million.
And you're confident sitting with me right now that this 2025 Blue Jay team, as constructed, can compete for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more fun. I think it's going to be a lot more fun than the last couple of years. I do. The division is literally wide open. I absolutely believe they're going to compete for a playoff spot, and I hope they'll be fun to watch, because I got to watch them 162 times.
Yeah, you get paid to watch them. No one's paying me to watch these Blue Jays. I might have to stick to the Toronto Maple Leafs at Christie Pitts. But man, I love my chats with you, Mike Wilner. We talked about, we covered a lot of ground here. Anything here? Because this is a long build-up here before I do the X show. Is there, other than we should all subscribe to Deep Left Field?
Yes.
And there's a new episode dropping today.
Yes.
Was there anything
and
you're like...
subscribe to the Toronto Star. It's $1 for 6 months. Come on, subscribe to the Star.
Ed Keenan's in this basement every quarter, and we talk about everything going on in the world. And I saw that this is March 13th, 2025, which means 5 years ago today, my last basement guest for a long time, because no one was allowed in. It was like Zooms, and then I moved it to the backyard, and eventually I got you in the backyard. But my last basement guest 5 years ago today was David Ryder from the Toronto Star.
Absolutely. Look at that, Toronto Star. And 5 years ago today, I was on an airplane getting the hell out of spring training. And spent my 50th birthday in quarantine. That was a blast.
My goodness. Well, happy birthday tomorrow.
Thank you.
Don't leave without the lasagna.
Never.
And that... it's Stu Stone who told me I should go hard on the "and that." And I said, Stu's kind of a showman, right? He was like a wrestling manager. Yep. This guy knows his shtick. And I said, I'm going to do that. And I've been doing it ever since. And that brings us to the end of our 1,650th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Of course, I'm active on Blue Sky. Much love. And follow Mike Wilner on Blue Sky as well. It's just Wilnerness, right?
Yep.
Wilnerness. Thanks and much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. We're going to see Wilner there on June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. You guys should come out too. $20 a selfie? Is that a good price if people come to TMLX 18?
Yeah, that's right.
We'll negotiate. Okay. Palma Pasta, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Building Toronto Skyline, and Ridley Funeral Home. Fresh episode in the Life's Undertaking feed from yesterday. Listen to Brad. See you all Monday when it's an episode of Toast with Rob Pruce and Bob Willett. What are we kicking out? I'm trying to remember. Oh, we're kicking out Problematic Jams. This will be interesting. Basically, well, the title speaks for itself. Problematic Jams. See you all then.